Fear Street Part 3 is the third and final film in the Fear Street Netflix series, which is based off of the Fear Street books by R.L Stine, and is set in 1666, where Colonial Town is gripped by a witch hunt that has deadly consequences for centuries to come, while teenagers in 1994 tried to put an end to the town's curse before it's too late. First of all, I have very mixed feelings about this movie. On one hand, I enjoyed it because many of the questions that I had in the first two films were answered, so I'm glad that, I finally know what the hell is going on. But on the other hand, it was shown in a slightly confusing way. So there are actually two parts to this movie. The first part was going back in time and seeing what Seraphia had to experience. And the second part was when these teens in 1994 had to finally put an end to this curse that's been haunting the town. Let me start with part one. It was nice to learn about the origin story of Seraphia, and it delves really deep into witchcraft in the medieval days where, they believed a lot of shit and were always so paranoid of evil spirits and stuff like that, right? And the setting and the acting, mostly the accents, were great, but I have one major issue. It just felt kind of weird because it tells the story of Seraphia but with many of the same actors from the first movie of 1994. So it almost felt like they went physically back in time, but instead of them being what's happening? What the hell? Why am I here? They're acting as if it's back then. And in a way, it almost felt like a separate movie or its own movie, separate from the Fear Street series. And if I look at it that way, it isn't very good because you don't really learn much about these people at all. And, their backstories, they're just ordinary medieval people. So you really don't care for any of these characters either, apart from Seraphia. Now, I still remember the end of the second movie where I saw the preview for this movie and I was like, what the hell? Did they travel back in time or something? Or does it tell the origin of Seraphia? I was very confused. And while watching part one of this movie, I thought to myself, maybe it would have been a lot better if it were different actors. But you know what? After watching the entire movie, I honestly didn't mind it anymore. Because when it goes into part two, it made a lot more sense. And I can see how part one makes more sense because it's like Dina's revisiting Sarah's memories as herself. So I guess there might be things that are different and it's altered memories in a way. That's maybe why we see all the same characters that, Dina knew, right? And it's like the memories have been altered, and it's like one of those folk tales that are told in the current time, but it's not perfect because no one who was telling these tales were actually there. It's passed on, something like that. I mean, hey, that could be a theory, but it still doesn't help the fact that it, while watching this part of the movie, it just didn't feel right. And the first 16 minutes was like a medieval romance in a way. I really didn't find myself caring at all for the movie, and it was also very boring. But then the film picks up. Part 2 definitely redeemed the movie a bit and was definitely better than part 1 because everything started to make a lot more sense and it was way more entertaining because of that. Although after a certain part, things do get pretty predictable. And I, as well as a lot of other people I presume, do have very mixed feelings about some of the results and the things that, that come to be, especially towards the end when things resolve itself And that's just been an ongoing thing throughout this whole series. It just feels like the first and the first and third film tries too hard, whereas the second one is very simple and straight to the point. You know what? I kind of wish they did what they did with the second movie and go back in time to highlight like one of the killers and their backstories in great detail, because the first one was like we were just clueless, and then the third one we basically end up knowing everything, so there wasn't a point to those anymore. But it would have been cool to see more of those movies like the second one in this series. I'm going to give Fear Street Part 3 a B-. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think down below. Like and sub if you enjoyed, and as always, feel free to check out any of my previous videos. Until next time.